Welcome to Mediastrom Cooper. Now let's begin with our top story. President Donald Trump is confronting significant criticism following developments tied to efforts around a potential agreement with Iran. The situation has triggered widespread debate across political lines, raising questions about strategy, economic consequences, and long-term stability in the Middle East. This story has unfolded against a complex backdrop of negotiations, military actions, and shifting alliances. What began as diplomatic talks aimed at addressing Iran's nuclear program quickly escalated into open conflict, only to pause with a fragile ceasefire. Now the focus has turned to the political price being paid at home and abroad. Let me walk through how we arrived at this point with careful attention to the facts. In his current term, President Trump pushed hard for a new understanding with Tehran. He set firm deadlines, insisting that Iran limit its nuclear activities in meaningful ways. Talks took place through mediators, including in places like Oman and later Pakistan. The goal was to prevent Iran from building a nuclear weapon while addressing broader concerns such as missile programs and regional influence. For months, negotiators exchanged proposals. One side wanted strict limits on uranium enrichment inside Iran with strong international inspections. The other side insisted on its right to peaceful nuclear technology under supervision. Progress appeared possible at times, but deep differences remained. Then the situation changed dramatically. After a deadline passed without full agreement, military strikes began. Israel launched operations targeting Iranian nuclear sites and leadership figures. The United States joined with its own actions against key facilities. What followed was a period of intense fighting that lasted several weeks. Reports described damage to infrastructure, loss of life on both sides, and disruption across the region. The Strait of Hormuz became a central issue. This narrow waterway carries a large share of the world's oil supplies. When shipping faced threats, energy markets reacted sharply. Oil prices climbed above $100 per barrel in some periods. That increase hit American drivers at the pump and affected global economies. Airlines faced higher fuel costs, and some routes saw added security measures that slowed travel. As the conflict continued, economic pressures mounted. Gas prices rose in many parts of the United States. Businesses worried about supply chains. Families felt the pinch in their daily budgets. These domestic impacts quickly became part of the political conversation. Inside Washington, reactions varied. Some members of Congress from the president's own party expressed private doubts about prolonging military involvement. They pointed to the original campaign promises to avoid extended engagements abroad. Public statements from certain Republican lawmakers highlighted concerns about costs and unclear end goals. Even voices known for strong support of defense policies raised questions about next steps, such as any potential ground operations. On the other side of the aisle, Democrats criticized the approach from the start. They argued that earlier diplomatic paths had been abandoned too quickly in the past, and that the current path risked unnecessary escalation. Former officials who worked on previous agreements spoke out, calling the recent framework a difficult starting point for future talks. Public opinion showed signs of strain as well. Polls indicated growing unease among some voters who had backed Trump in the past. While core supporters remained firm in viewing the actions as necessary to counter threats, others worried about the direction. Anti-war gatherings appeared in several cities, with demonstrators calling for de-escalation and a return to negotiations. The president himself addressed these matters in public appearances and statements. He described the military efforts as successful in meeting key objectives, such as setting back Iran's nuclear capabilities. He emphasized that the United States was protecting its interests and those of allies like Israel. At one point, strong language was used in warnings about consequences if demands were not met, including references to serious impacts on Iranian infrastructure. Those remarks drew sharp responses from various quarters, including international organizations and some domestic voices who found the tone concerning. A turning point came recently with the announcement of a 2-week ceasefire. President Trump indicated that attacks would pause if the Strait of Hormuz reopened to normal shipping. Iran accepted the pause, and talks are set to continue in Islamabad. Both sides claim to have achieved important goals during the fighting. The United States pointed to degraded nuclear sites and reduced immediate threats. Iranian statements suggested resilience and defense of sovereignty. This ceasefire is described as fragile. Observers note that it provides breathing room but does not resolve underlying issues. Negotiations ahead will likely revisit limits on enrichment, verification measures, stockpiles of enriched material, and broader security concerns. Experts point out that trust remains low after years of broken agreements and recent violence. The economic fallout continues to shape the narrative. High energy costs have affected everything from commuting to manufacturing. Some analysts warn that prolonged uncertainty could slow growth. Advisors close to the administration have privately urged finding a clear path forward to limit further damage to the economy and political standing. Looking at the broader picture, this episode connects to long-standing debates about how the United States deals with Iran. During Trump's first term, the decision was made to withdraw from the 2015 nuclear agreement known as the JCPOA. That deal had placed temporary limits on Iran's program in exchange for sanctions relief. Supporters of the withdrawal argued it was flawed because it did not address missiles or regional proxies and had expiration dates. Critics said pulling out removed constraints and allowed Iran to advance its capabilities. Now, in 2026, the conversation has returned to similar themes but under far more tense conditions. The recent conflict has altered the landscape. Nuclear facilities suffered damage, but questions remain about how quickly Iran could rebuild. International inspectors face challenges in accessing sites and verifying details. Allies and partners in the Gulf region have their own views. Some countries there have called for any final agreement to go beyond ending the fighting. They want lasting limits on Iran's ability to threaten shipping lanes or launch missiles and drones. Stability in energy markets matters deeply to them. On the global stage, reactions have been mixed. Some nations expressed concern about the escalation and its effect on international norms. Others watch closely to see how the balance of power in the Middle East might shift. Russia and China, which have ties with Iran, offered their perspectives through diplomatic channels. Inside the United States, the political divisions run deep. This is not just a foreign policy story. It touches elections, party unity, and public trust. Midterm elections loom later this year, and some strategists worry that ongoing costs or instability could influence voter sentiment. Others believe that projecting strength will ultimately strengthen the administration's position. Let us examine the sequence of events more closely to understand the layers. Early in the term, indirect talks resumed with Oman helping as a go-between. Proposals were exchanged on verification, stockpiles, and enrichment. At moments, officials suggested progress was near. Then, positions hardened. A 60-day deadline came and went without resolution. Military options moved to the forefront. Israeli strikes hit leadership targets and nuclear infrastructure. The United States conducted its own targeted operations. Iran responded with its capabilities, leading to exchanges that raised fears of wider war. Civilian impacts were reported, adding to the human cost. Throughout, the president maintained that quick, decisive action would bring results. He spoke of winning big and achieving objectives faster than some expected. Yet as weeks passed, the reality of sustained economic pressure and political noise became evident. Republican lawmakers received briefings where questions surfaced about potential next phases. Even traditionally hawkish figures voiced caution about deeper involvement. This internal friction marked a notable development given the usual alignment on security matters. Democrats, meanwhile, highlighted what they saw as risks of repeating past mistakes in the region. They pointed to the importance of multilateral approaches and warned against isolating the United States diplomatically. Public protests, though not massive in scale, reflected a segment of society uneasy with military conflict. Social media amplified voices on all sides, some praising decisive leadership, others calling for restraint. The strong rhetoric used in certain messages, including references to civilization-level consequences, intensified the backlash. Critics across the spectrum described the language as excessive or alarming. Supporters viewed it as necessary pressure to achieve results. When the ceasefire announcement came, it brought a measure of relief to markets and travelers. Oil prices showed some movement downward as shipping prospects improved. Yet analysts caution that 2 weeks is a short window. Much depends on the talks that follow. Key issues for those negotiations include how to verifiably limit uranium enrichment levels and stockpiles, the role of international inspectors and access to sites, addressing Iran's missile and drone programs, ensuring the Strait of Hormuz and other waterways remain open without threat, balancing security needs of Israel and Gulf partners with steps toward de-escalation. Experts with experience in past talks note that reaching a durable agreement will require compromise from all parties. History shows that mistrust runs deep. Any deal will need clear enforcement mechanisms to build confidence. From a domestic political standpoint, the administration faces a balancing act. It must demonstrate that actions taken protected American interests without leading to open-ended commitments. Communication about achievements, costs, and future plans will matter greatly. Voter sentiment appears divided along familiar lines, but economic factors, gas prices, inflation pressures, could broaden the impact. When everyday expenses rise due to events overseas, people pay closer attention. Internationally, the episode has tested alliances. European partners have expressed their own concerns about stability and nuclear proliferation. Asian economies watching energy supplies have a stake in peaceful resolution. As this story continues, several outcomes remain possible. A successful negotiation could lead to a new framework that reduces risks for the region and the world. Failure to find common ground might see tensions rise again, with further economic and security consequences. The president has signaled confidence in the path forward. He has described the military phase as having met its goals and expressed hope for a resolution that brings lasting benefits. Critics continue to question the overall strategy and its costs. This situation reminds us how interconnected foreign policy decisions are with life at home. Energy security, national defense, and political trust all intersect. Citizens across the country watch closely as leaders navigate these challenges. In the coming days and weeks, attention will turn to the talks in Islamabad and any statements from the White House. Will the ceasefire hold? Can negotiators bridge the remaining gaps? How will economic indicators respond? These questions do not have easy answers. What is clear is that the current moment carries high stakes for the Middle East, for global energy flows, and for the political landscape in the United States. President Trump now faces a test of leadership in managing the fallout while pursuing what he sees as necessary security outcomes. The criticism reflects deep divisions about America's role in the world and the best ways to protect its people and partners. As developments unfold, staying informed with accurate details will help citizens form their own judgments. The story is still being written, with potential for both progress and setbacks. This episode also invites reflection on longer patterns in U.S.-Iran relations. Decades of tension, periods of engagement, and moments of confrontation have shaped the present. Learning from what worked and what did not in the past could inform better choices ahead. For now, the focus remains on the immediate ceasefire and the negotiations it enables. Economic relief, if sustained, could ease some pressures. Political unity, even partial, might strengthen the hand at the table. Yet the underlying issues, nuclear ambitions, regional rivalries, and mutual suspicions, will not disappear quickly. Any lasting solution will demand patience, clear communication, and realistic expectations from all involved. Americans deserve transparent discussion about these matters. Costs in lives, dollars, and stability are real. Benefits and greater security must be weighed carefully. As the administration moves forward, its ability to explain the strategy and deliver results will shape public perception and political consequences. The coming period will reveal much about the resilience of diplomacy after conflict and the capacity of leaders to turn a difficult chapter into a more stable future.